Hey everyone, this is Dave. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Today I wanted to touch base on Intuitive Machines stock and what's been going on with them. It's a pretty exciting time for the company. They have a new launch coming up with their IM-2 Athena vehicle scheduled to land on the moon in early March. The stock has run up dramatically, and personally I have big gains in my shares. Hopefully if you're holding the company, you do as well. And it's an incredibly interesting and uncertain time when it comes to the future of NASA, the new administration coming in, and how that will all play into the bigger picture. So I wanted to talk a little bit about short-term moves in the stock, potential catalysts around the recent launch, what I'm thinking of doing with my own shares, as well as the bigger picture, long-term potential risks, as well as catalysts. Before we dive into that, I hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. Every new subscriber is very much appreciated, and if you are already subscribed, well, thank you so much for doing that, and I will check out your comments down below as always. Okay, let's dive into some thoughts on Intuitive Machines stock. Starting off, before I dive into any company stock, when I talk about a company specifically, I do want to be open and share my own position. So with Intuitive Machines, ticker symbol LUNR, I do have 200 shares, pretty small position for me, but it's a fun little company that I was interested in making a play on, and I bought the shares for an average price of $4.96 and obviously done quite well on them because last price was $17.93. That gives me a cost basis of around $991 US and current value $3,570. So over a triple on those shares. Previously, I did have a 4x, but the stock has fallen back a little bit. If we take a look at the stock chart, you can see, yes, amazing run since basically August, where a lot of these space companies, Rocket Labs, others as well, have also had amazing runs. So certainly not just Intuitive Machines, and they're definitely taking advantage of interest rate cuts and the macro environment and all the rest, so not all just driven by the company itself. They have had a little bit of a pullback lately though as well, following the macro with, some strong jobs numbers and people getting worried that rates won't be cut as fast as we expect, has caused a lot of these growth stocks to drop a fair bit, but still quite a good return for Intuitive Machines and not complaining about that $17.87 price at all. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit, first of all, about the big picture and the biggest risk to Intuitive Machines, because if you are investing in them, I think you have to understand this risk, and that is customer concentration risk. NASA is by far their biggest customer. It is not their only customer. They do have some commercial customers where they're taking payloads on their lunar landers out to the moon and beyond. They actually have a pretty cool contract with an asteroid mining company on one of their Nova landers to loft it out towards an asteroid, which is pretty cool, as well as delivering some commercial payloads to the lunar surface. But NASA, by far their biggest customer. Without NASA, I really don't think the company would survive. Very, very key customer for Intuitive Machines, and they have a great relationship with NASA as well, and several former NASA employees, stuff like that. So the big picture issue is, though, we have Elon Musk obviously very close with incoming President Donald Trump, also very close with incoming NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, and he has come out and said, we're going straight to Mars. The moon is a distraction. So he personally doesn't seem very interested in the moon at all. And you don't know for sure how much influence he's going to be having on Trump, on Jared, whether these people are just happen to be like-minded or not, and how this whole thing would play out. I would say with normal administrations, you wouldn't have to worry about massive shifts, but Trump isn't unknown for making wild changes, drastic changes, and he's looking to really do a massive shakeup at NASA, try to cut their budget and become more efficient. So right now, I feel like it's anybody's guess what happens with NASA during this next administration. Obviously, they're going to focus more on commercial companies and driving down costs. So on the one hand, Maybe that's more contracts coming out for companies like Intuitive Machines. But if they do decide to refocus more on Mars than on the moon, then Intuitive Machines is in big trouble because the entire company is built around growing that cislunar economy and with a focus on the moon. Personally, I don't think Artemis is going to get like scrapped completely or anything like that. They're too far along in the program. Trump actually started the program himself when he was in office. I just don't think that'll happen. Plus, I don't think anyone in the States wants to see China setting up a moon base when the States hasn't and they're working towards Mars. I don't think that would be a good look for Trump or Elon or anyone to see that happening. And China has kind of made commitments to that in that regard. But I do have to share the risk with you that if NASA starts to lose focus on the moon, focus more on Mars, that is a real concern for Intuitive Machines. There's not a ton of commercial customers as of yet that could support a company like IM without NASA, not like some other companies out there which could survive, in the commercial area with commercial customers without NASA. I wouldn't put Intuitive Machines in that category. Elon also said that the Artemis architecture is extremely inefficient as it's a jobs maximizing program, not a results maximizing program. Something entirely new is needed. And do remember that Intuitive Machines going to the moon are part of the CLIPS portion of the Artemis program. Isaac Min did also make an interesting comment on X, incoming NASA administrator. He wrote, "I was born after the moon landings. My children were born after the final space shuttle. With the support of President Trump, I can promise you we'll never again lose our ability to journey to the stars and never settle for second place." That would seem to indicate they don't want to settle for, China being ahead of them on lunar infrastructure and architecture. So, potential big risk there for Lunar, but I don't think it will come to fruition. Nevertheless, I do want to point it out for any investors or potential investors when it comes to Intuitive Machines. Next up, I do want to talk about Intuitive Machines' IM-2 mission, which is sending lander Athena to the surface of the moon. Potential to do a little swing trade around this because I was thinking about doing it with IM-1, didn't pull the trigger, but we can see if we go back to February of 2024, the stock before the mission was trading around 250. And during the mission and right after, it hit a peak of 1099. So that's like a 5x in a very short period of time, 5x in about a 1 month period. And you have to wonder if something similar could happen with IM2, maybe not to the same degree, but if you get a solid return in a 1 month period, you want to play a short swing trade, it's a possibility. So it's something I've been looking into as well and considering if this is something I want to play every now and again. I do like to make some short-term trades around space companies. There's a couple factors to consider, though, when we're talking about Athena. First of all, I will say that my confidence has grown in Intuitive Machines' team. I think their CEO, Steve Altemus, is pretty impressive overall. I also think the team performed quite well during the IM-1 mission, doing all sorts of troubleshooting after they encountered issues where someone forgot to enable a laser rangefinder and they had trouble figuring out just how far they were from the lunar surface. They did a lot of troubleshooting during that mission and were able to sort of land on the moon successfully, albeit kind of sideways, but the team did impress, and hopefully they can learn from that first mission, land successfully. Personally, I would put the odds that they land successfully in mission 2 pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about the team and the lander on this second go around. So that is one thing to think about. However, there are some other factors. If you think back to that first mission, Intuitive Machines was one of a few lunar landers flying to the surface around that same time, and they were the most successful lander. Peregrine from Astrobotic flew first. It had pretty catastrophic failure not long after launch. They ended up orbiting the moon and coming back, from what I understand, crash landing into the ocean. So that team was a little bit disappointed, and it may have made Intuitive Machines look even better that they were able to make it to the lunar surface, in that they, quote unquote, I guess you could say, beat that Peregrine lander. Now, this time around, there is another lander heading towards the moon in a similar time frame. It's not Astrobotic this time. It is Firefly Aerospace with their Blue Ghost lander. Now, the thing with the Blue Ghost lander is It's actually set to launch before IM2, but it will have a longer transit time. So we're doing a bit of math here because I'm very interested in which lunar lander will potentially land on the moon first. Launch window for Blue Ghost on a Falcon 9 will open on Wednesday, January 15th. It will spend 25 days orbiting Earth. Then it will burn its engines and head towards a lunar trajectory. After another 20 days, it will begin its autonomous touchdown procedure. Meanwhile, Athena, which is Intuitive Machines' new lander, is scheduled to lift off on a Falcon 9 at the end of February, and the current launch date supports a lunar landing about a week later on March 6th or 7th. So the IM-2 lander launching about a month and a half later, but spending much less amount of time to get to the moon and land there. The landing schedules are pretty close, but it does look like, unless there's some issue, to me at least, Blue Ghost should land first. So I do wonder, if you're playing this trade, if Blue Ghost has a flawless, successful landing, does that kind of steal some of the thunder and publicity from the Intuitive Machines lander? And maybe everyone's talking about Firefly. Intuitive Machines doesn't get as much of a bump in publicity, attention, stock price if they land successfully just a week after we've had this other lander come in successfully. So that is a concern if you are thinking of doing a swing trade around this launch. Bringing it back to my shares and the stock, while I do have pretty good confidence now in the company's performance, and I do like the CEO, as I said, and the management team and their communications. Encourage you to check out their podcast, which is actually pretty cool, and what they're doing. The stock's run up a lot. It is looking a little bit more expensive to me. Yes, they did win that NSN award, which is extremely big for the company, and I do kind of like them going forward, but I'm also buying a house soon, and I was thinking of taking some gains to put towards the house. Still might do that, but I'm also really wondering if I want to hold on to it for this launch in case there is another run-up. I think there's factors in play that make a big move less likely in the stock, not least of which is the current macro conditions, as well as the fact that it's already done something like a 3x in the last 6 months, so maybe less primed for a big move than it was in that last launch. The market cap is sitting at something like $3 billion right now. I think revenue growth still has a long way to go. They've taken some moves to shore up their balance sheet. This one falls extremely firmly in the speculative category. So do know that if you're buying the company, the revenue is not nearly as steady and reliable as a company like, say, a Rocket Lab. And it is a lot newer as well. So there are a lot of question marks around this company. I think what I'm leaning towards doing right now is selling 100 shares to put it towards my new house, holding on to 100 shares, mainly just because I like the company and I think what they do is pretty cool. We'll see what happens with those during the launch. If it does a crazy move, I might have to sell in and wait for a retracement to buy back in. I would like long-term to continue to be a shareholder because I do just find the company pretty cool, and I do like the team, and I'm fairly impressed by what they've done so far. But definitely very high risk. It's a much smaller position for me than a Rocket Lab, and it has to be for the right price as well when you look at their revenues and how far they potentially still are from achieving that profitability milestone. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, today a bit of a quicker video. Do let me know what you think of Intuitive Machines yourself. Do you think the stock is expensive? Are you expecting a big move around this upcoming lunar lander launch? Maybe buying a call option, but doing a stop loss, so if it doesn't move, you can get out without a big loss. If that does happen, I do think I would want to kind of hedge my bets and do quite a long expiry date, as opposed to something like right after the lander, because again, my confidence is not quite there that it will have a big move this time around. I think it's always a possibility, but I'm really interested to hear your guys' thoughts. And of course, beyond that swing trade with the long-term future of the company, when are you thinking they'll achieve profitability? How are you thinking their revenue will grow? All those great things. Love to continue the discussion down below with you. This is a very interesting company in the space industry, one of very few that are a pure play, publicly traded space company. So I do hope for their success. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll be checking out New Glenn's launch, which is set to happen very soon. Let me know if you will as well. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.